To acknowledge that I live and work on the lands of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation at the University of Sydney in Australia. And I've come here as a Sloan Fellow in photography for the next couple of months, supported by the Bodleian Library and also Trinity College, so it's a great pleasure to be here. So the Modernist Photobooks that I've been looking at, as Chris mentioned, are part of the Chadwyck-Healey collection that were donated in 2020. So a lot of them haven't actually been looked at as yet, which is exciting for me. And there's an awful lot of them, there's a couple of thousand, but rather than looking at every single one, I've been looking at books that, for me, connect something with my other research in terms of, I've worked a lot on modernist photography, but also on German photography in particular. So these German modernist photo books, and there's also an American here, Margaret Burke-White, really connect for me the aesthetics of the modernist period with the aesthetics implied or employed by various regimes across Europe, including, of course, National Socialism and also in Russia. So there's some more to come around that in the next few weeks, hopefully in time for my talk on the 27th of February. So what I thought I might do is just point out a few of these books so that you can actually have a look at them in detail, but you know what you're looking at when you get there. On this side, there is a collection of material from Heinrich Hoffmann. Heinrich Hoffmann was the chief personal photographer of Hitler. He actually trained here in Britain under E.O. Hopp for a couple of years before going back to Germany and convincing the new star of Germany, rising Chancellor and leader, the Führer, Adolf Hitler, that photography was in fact to his benefit. Before that, Hitler was actually very camera shy and didn't like his photograph taken, and in fact would be quite violent if people took his photograph without his permission. So interestingly enough, in a couple of these books, there is the first photograph that Heinrich Hoffmann took of Hitler, which was actually in a crowd, which he didn't even know was Hitler until many years later, when he looked more closely at the photograph. So these books are really interesting because you can see, for instance, here there are also postcards that Philip very kindly got out for me this morning. There's images here which are actually cigarette cards. What I'm not quite sure about yet, because I only found this yesterday, is whether or not people bought the book and then collected the cigarette cards, or whether they were in the book to start with. So there are some missing, unfortunately, in this book, but they're quite bizarre and very disturbing. And at the end of yesterday, I said to Maddie, I need a gin and tonic. After looking at this stuff, it's just too much. And next to it is a Leni Riefenstahl program for Triumph des Willens, one of her key Nazi propaganda films. She employs, of course, in this brochure, photo montage, which was used by modernist artists, modernist photographers across the world, particularly Dada, Surrealists, etc., in order to convey various different meanings. And here it's used for propaganda. So these are the links that I'm looking at. In this book here, you will find, I've actually opened it up to a page. This is Hitler and the Children of Germany. And it's very, I looked at it and I thought, oh yeah, it's just photographs of kids, you know, doing their thing of, you know, with Hitler, as he liked to, you know, bestow upon them his greatness. And yet, the first photograph I looked at, I thought, oh my God, I'm totally creeped out. And what he's done is he has retouched some of the photographs in there to make Hitler look better, but also to make children smile. So you'll see in that photograph there, he obviously took the photograph, the children in the front were smiling, so he's retouched it. So I found several throughout the book that do the same thing. So for me, you know, it reminded me very much of what AI is doing at the moment, is the ways in which AI can't quite get faces right. And it was really obvious when I looked at them and I thought, yeah, very strange. But it brings home to us, I suppose, the ways in which photography is used in a multiplicity of ways, both as dissemination through photo books, through, of course, the rise of photography in newspapers in the early 20th century to convey information to the illiterate in Russia, but also further afield in terms of just the news in general, that, you know, a picture speaks 1,000 words, apparently, which is not quite true, but also the fact that photography is supposed to be true, which we also know it's not. And it's quite evident here in the ways in which these photographs have been manipulated. We also have Photo Alga here, which is a fantastic photography book that was produced in 1929, the same by Lizitsky and Jan Chishold, the same year as the very, very famous film and photo exhibition. It's been obviously associated with that exhibition, but it was not produced for it. And in fact, the catalogue that was produced for that had very few photographs in it. So there are 76 photographs in this. What's interesting is the ways in which they have included photographs for a whole range of different means of treating the medium, from actual artist photographers, photojournalists, but also medical photography, scientific photography. So it's really interesting because in this time, of course, in Europe, photographers weren't just one thing, and in fact they're not now. But most prominently at that time, they had to earn a living. So most of them were photojournalists or studio photographers, as well as art photographers. So that's the kind of, well, it turned out to be the boys on that side. And on this side, we have the amazing book by Margaret Bourke-White here, Eyes on Russia, which was actually given to Charlie Chaplin. There is an inscription in the front here, and he was obviously a fan of hers, and they knew each other. And this is a fascinating book that she took all of these incredible photographs of Russia in line with the 5-year plan, Stalin's 5-year plan, and trekked around the country. She waited for like 6 months or more in Berlin for a visa to get there, and ended up convincing the officials to let her in. And she took all of these incredible photographs and spent, I think, 24 hours or 48 hours at the end, non-stop, developing them and the films, and to get them out of the country in time, because she was worried that they might actually be seized. Short story, long story. But anyway, really fascinating, but another type of propaganda, and there's a whole various essays throughout the entire thing written by her. Here we actually have 2 books by Germaine Krull, a very famous German photographer who escaped Germany and actually moved to Paris. These are photographs, they're actually quite incredible. Please be very careful, because there actually is a portfolio of photographs that sit in here as single items. So a lot of these books actually have missing pages because people sell the individual pages or frame them, because they're treated as artworks, and quite rightly so. But it's extraordinary. So these are all photographs of metal, like the industrialisation of Europe, the same in a way of what Germaine Krull, Margaret Bourke-White is doing here, is documenting that the industrialisation of Russia is the industrialisation of Paris, but also Rotterdam. And they're extremely beautiful. But you can see the influences, for instance, of the New Vision photography in Germany, but also Surrealism. Of course, embedded in Paris, how could you not be influenced by Surrealism at that time? But what the key, like, this is just absolutely stunning. This last book here, I didn't even know it was here. I kind of grabbed it, you know, off the computer, looked at it and went, oh my God, you've got to be kidding me. And it's Germaine Krull again, but they're photographs that illustrate Georges Simenon murder mystery. And they had employed actors and all sorts of things to do the dying, you know, squalor, you know, the murder victim and all the rest of it. And they're just absolutely gorgeous. And so I really, really want to delve more into that and write about it. And how did it come about? You know, why was she employed to do this? You know, who were the actors? You know, I could do an entire chapter just about that book. But it's quite extraordinary. But it's completely and vastly different to this book here. But have a little look around at them, because they're quite extraordinary. Just be careful with some of these. The cigarette cards, some of them are just being held in, so they don't just prevent them from falling off. And of course, definitely take your time looking at the Metal book, because it's extraordinary. And I'm here to answer any questions or for a chat afterwards. But thanks for listening.